We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
And welcome back into Tapped Out here on the BetQL Network with BT, Brendan Tobin, just me, the sports machine, Sean Levine. And is that the Dimalo doorbell that I hear? Is that my boy J-Rod? Jim Rodriguez joining us, host of Pro Box TV and the Better Side. And you can hear him here all over the BetQL Network. J-Rod, good to have you back on, my brother. We haven't spoke since the Usyk-Fury matchup. What was your biggest surprise? What's your biggest takeaway from that fight? Are you more surprised that Fury got knocked all around the ring? Or are you more surprised that we now have an undisputed heavyweight champion and it's Usyk?
Yeah, first of all, always good seeing you guys. Always good talking to everybody here on Tapped Out. Listen, there's an old adage, right, that says the bigger guy always wins in any fight, right? And I had a nice bet. Like the prop I had was that Fury was going to get knocked down in the fight because he gets knocked down in every fight. But it did not surprise me that Usyk won and became undisputed heavyweight champion. It did strike me as surprising as how quickly that fight turned around because Fury dominated the first half of that fight. And then it almost feels like in typical Tyson Fury fashion, almost like you would see in a movie, he kind of took his foot off the gas, started playing around a little bit, started juking and jiving. And Usyk is just a machine, man. I don't know if it's the Eastern mentality, the discipline, being from the Ukraine, that you just don't mess with guys like that. And he just systematically broke him down and won that fight. And listen, I think Usyk won the fight. I don't think there was any controversy there. Might have been a draw. You could have looked at it as a draw, stuff like that. Sets up the second fight beautifully, but it didn't surprise me that Usyk won because the guy, if he told me it's raining outside, I would go get an umbrella.
Do you feel, Jim, at all like we're heading towards this new era in the heavyweight division? I don't really know who's going to take over, but we see what happens to Deontay Wilder last week, and him and Fury, it leaned Fury, but those guys were in some hellacious fights, man, over the three in the trilogy, and maybe they're just worn down from that. Like, do you feel like their eras of greatness are over?
Yeah, well, for Deontay, unfortunately, I think his time has passed. I mean, I think those three fights with Tyson Fury, he left every bit of himself in that ring. And even the Saudis, Uncle Turkey was telling him, listen, I need you to throw punches. I need you to be bomb squad. And he just couldn't do it. And you just feel like there's no more bullets in the gun for Deontay Wilder. I think we have a new generation of heavies coming up, with Daniel Dubois, Zile Zhang, Joseph Parker, who aren't exactly young guys, but it's a new generation of guys. And the thing that blew my mind, and we talked about it on Pro Box TV, guys, is that Usyk is all of a sudden saying he wants to go back down to cruiser. You're like, why would you do that? It's like, you win the NBA championship and I'm now going to go play in the Euro League. No disrespect there, but it's like, why would you go back down to cruiser? I just don't think there's anybody there he wants to fight at heavy, and he wants a new challenge. So it's a new day in the heavyweight division, but you just got to wonder if these guys are those sexy names, even though it's a sexy division.
Do you feel like is the idea there maybe to link up with Canelo? Like Canelo's kind of flirted with going up, but now it didn't go well for him at Bivol. But if they were going to do a super fight, Crawford, he doesn't seem that keen on fighting Benavidez. Like a no-lose real situation for him would be to go up and fight Usyk. Like, do you think that that's maybe on Usyk's mind at all? If he could lure Canelo to a doable division?
That's wild. I actually hadn't heard that. I know Canelo has gone through his channels and said he's not interested in fighting Bud Crawford. Listen, I'm all for chaos. I'm all for making these crazy super fights, and I think Turki Al-Rashid has done an amazing job of getting boxing fans and combat sports fans what they want to see. But there are weight divisions for a reason. And I think, all of a sudden, Bud going from, listen, we saw Charlo fight Canelo, and that was 2 weights. Can you 3 weights, and now Canelo's going to go up to heavy? I don't know. I think there is. It's not a video game at the end of the day. These are human beings, and there is walking around stuff. I don't know. I think Usyk I think maybe he saw what happened to Fury. He saw what happened to Wilder. Maybe he doesn't want to leave a piece of himself that the heavyweight division wants to go back down to cruiser, maybe unify that thing again and then ride into the sunset. But Canelo's an interesting. I don't know what Canelo wants. Do you know what Canelo wants? I mean, doesn't want to fight Benavidez. Doesn't want to fight Bud Crawford. Who does he want to fight? Who are you fighting? Exactly. He didn't want to fight William Skull. What are you doing?
And the interesting thing for me, Jim, is like he also is like he's very big on, well, what do I get out of this? Like, what is, Crawford, I'm not going to get any credit. Benavidez, everyone's going to say, oh, too bad. Like, so I feel like this is the only situation. Like, unless he's going to do Bivol again, I think that's a bad idea. So you go and you do something crazy. That one makes sense to me if he wants to do it. I would love to see that. I mean, Crawford or Benavidez are the top for me, obviously, and I think for any boxing fan. But if you're going to do something wacky, that's out of the
BT. Why would he not get credit for the Crawford fight if he beat him? I mean, and he would take.
According to him, he's just saying that he says if he beats Crawford, which I think Crawford's a big challenge for him because he's always had trouble with guys with boxing skill. I think it's just a matter of he says, according to Canelo, it's like, oh, they're going to say if I beat him that he was too small.
How do you think that fight would go down, J-Rod? If we see it like soon, because I don't want it to be a Pacquiao-Mayweather thing where we see it when both guys are already in wheelchairs with walkers.
Listen, I had Tim Bradley tell me that he thinks Bud wins that fight. Usyk went on a podcast and said he thinks Crawford wins that fight. I think Canelo wins the fight. I think Bud makes it competitive just because of his savviness and the way he's in there. But Canelo, at the end of the day, whether you like him or not, dude is a brick wall. It's hard to break him down. You know what I mean? I think he lost to Bivol because I don't think he properly trained for Bivol, and he ran out of gas, literally ran out of gas. There was a hot mic in the corner where he told Eddie Reynoso, I don't got anything left, and he sort of just survived the last couple of rounds. So I think a proper training camp, I don't know. I love Bud, and I love Canelo. So I don't know. That'd be tough. It's like picking between your kids. But the one thing that got me really interested, and this is where we go back to Turki Al-Rashid is the 5 versus 5 was a super success, right? With Matchroom in Queensberry, and now De La Hoya wants to do a 5 versus 5 with Golden Boy and Top Rank. There's a rumor that Turki Al-Rashid wants to do a 5 versus 5, but USA versus Mexico. Now, to me, can you imagine you did that in Vegas at Alliance Stadium? La Raza would be out. I mean, Canelo Crawford, Munguia against Caleb Plant. That would be an amazing. I would put my hand in my pocket for that one. That would be an amazing, but you'd have to do it in Vegas. And I think the August 3rd fight that's coming up in LA between Crawford and Madrimov, and we're going to see Andy Cruz and we're going to see Andy Ruiz. Hopefully we see Virgil Ortiz. There's a rumor he's going to be back in there. That's going to be a big test because it's going to be the first fight that Turkey does outside of Saudi. Because I don't know, when you watch those Saudi fights, guys, do you feel, what it reminds me of? It reminds me of watching the NBA finals during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, it's basketball. It's LeBron. It's Jimmy Butler. It's the finals. But that's what it feels like when I watch those fights from Saudi. So I think going to LA, going to Wembley in September, I think that's going to be huge for the Turkey experiment in boxing.
Coming up next week, J-Rod, we got a big pay-per-view, nice little doubleheader. Gervonta Davis, Frank Martin, intriguing fight. Frank Martin is really, really talented. Might be a little bit too quick for this. Gervonta is playing those head games. I was at the press conference to launch that. What do you think? Do you think Frank Martin's got any chance in this matchup? He's a 5-1 dog basically going into this against Tank. What do you make of this matchup?
It's curious because remember, Tank hasn't fought since that massive pay-per-view against Ryan Garcia. We've almost forgotten about him. It's been over a year since he's been in the ring. I think at the end of the day, this may be, first of all, Frank Martin's a southpaw. He's the biggest southpaw. He's probably the most talented southpaw that Tank Davis has ever seen. And what makes Tank frustrating, as I guess as a sports investor, is that he's not afraid to fall behind. He's not afraid to lose, to be down 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, and then boom, fight's over and he wins. Kind of reminds me of Deontay Wilder in a way, in a way. But I mean, obviously Deontay was a home run hitter, as opposed to Tank, who's a skilled professional boxer. I think Tank wins the fight. I'm curious to see what a year off does to Tank Davis. I think Frank Martin has got a great opportunity. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. And we've seen like when Tank fought Pitbull, all of a sudden the level went up and Tank had to get up. I think he suckered Ryan Garcia into rehydration clauses and stuff like that. But I think Tank is the classic guy that he fights against the level of his competition, and this is going to be a tough matchup. I think it's going to be a good fight. Tank wins the fight. I think. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes the distance. But I think it's going to be a good fight, and it's going to tell us a lot about Tank, and if Tank wants to stay at 135, because 140 is floating out there too.
Yeah, so
Frank
the
Martin,
odds,
by the way, also a really good college basketball coach. I feel like I need to throw that in there. He's a busy
Shout
guy.
out Miami High.
Busy guy.
That's right.
No,
That's right.
I was gonna ask. So, do you think there's value in? I think Tank's like around 3-1 by decision right now. Would you like a play like that going into this?
Yeah, I was checking on BetMGM today. And Tank's minus 700. No, thank you. I think a decision. I think that would be an interesting way of approaching it. Just because I think Tank wants rounds. I think it would be prohibitive for him to go in there and knock him out in the first couple of rounds. I don't think he can. I think he'll lay those traps, and I think Frank Martin will get caught in it. But I think Frank Martin's a lot better than people think. And yeah, going back to the basketball coach, is that the most Cuban name ever? Frank Martin. That's I love him. I'm Cuban. I'm Cuban. At least I have the Rodriguez in there. When Frank Martin, it's like when Troy O'Leary. I met Troy O'Leary. You don't look like a Troy O'Leary. Frank Martin. You don't look like a Frank Martin, my friend.
Well, you do look like a Jim Rodriguez. At J-Rod Show, host from ProBox TV and The Better Side, joining us here on Tapped Out. You mentioned Tank Davis, so I got to mention Ryan Garcia. What's next for him? Because now he's had back-to-back big-name fights. He's kind of teased a crossover matchup against Sean O'Malley. He's kind of a weird dude. What do you think actually is the next fight that we see Ryan Garcia in?
I heard there was a welfare check that they did. He said his mom isn't doing well. He's got the PEDs things with the New York State Athletic Commission. I think at the end of the day, and we know boxing, and we know how boxing is a lot like the beautiful city of Miami that I live in. It's a sunny place for shady people. That's what boxing is, a sunny place for shady people. And I think Ryan Garcia is perfect here. I think they will look at Ryan Garcia and say, Ryan, when do you want to fight next? I want to take a year off. Okay, you're suspended for a year. Oh, you want to fight in 6 months? Oh, you're suspended for 6 months. I think nothing will happen to Ryan Garcia. I think he proved his point. He's a cheater. He's a bad dude in sense, but at the end of the day, he kept the money. Haney will get his O back. But the scary part is that he's actually a very good, skilled, entertaining fighter who knows how to sell fights. So that'll keep him employed and listen, I think I would love to see him in the 140, maybe 147s to see who's out there. Virgil Ortiz 154. That may be too big, but maybe a welter. Maybe those super lightweights. That 140 is an amazing class with Teofimo and Subriel Matias. And Haney's still in there. It's an amazing class. So I'd love to see him in a competitive fight, but he will be back. He will be back quickly. He'll be back when he wants to be back. I just hope that he gets surrounded with people that truly have his best interest and aren't just aren't succubuses.
Well, speaking of best interests, I'm curious. We have the news this week that the Mike Tyson Jake Paul bout has been punted to November. Has the medical issues that Mike Tyson has recently suffered that postponed this, supposed to be in July, has it changed your mind at all about doing this fight? Should they be doing this fight? Were you into this fight in the first place? Where do you stand? Tyson, Jake Paul, should they be doing this, even though it seems like Mike Tyson is way too old to be fighting?
I did find it ironic that he was in Miami when he had his episode. He was on a plane going back to LA. And that's the classic code of I thought we were going to say that Mike had some dehydration problems. Apparently it's an ulcer problem. So Mike Tyson's almost 60 years old. I have no interest in seeing this. It's like It's like, hey, let's remake Mad Max, or let's remake this other movie, or let's remake that movie. I don't want to see that. I love Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul is good for boxing because he gets people to watch boxing. I think the real star of that card is Serrano Taylor 2, and I think that needs to get made, and that needs to get made quickly. And the fact that two women could be fighting in front of 40, 50,000 people at AT&T Stadium, I think is what Jake Paul brings to the sport. But I don't want to see Mike Tyson in the ring. I really don't. A
lot of people don't.
And it's not that I have the greatest heart or I'm the greatest humanitarian. I think Mike's 60 years old, almost 60 years old. That's enough of that.
Nobody wants to see that. Jim Rodriguez, friend of the show from Pro Box TV and the Better Side, joining us here on Tapped Out. Great stuff as always, my friend. Thanks so much for your time. Coming up next here on the BetQL Network, BT brings on a fighter in tonight's main event. Xander Zayas joins us here on the BetQL Network.